Hello, and welcome to this Soulstreaker ASMR video. Make sure to like and subscribe for more videos, and check out the links in the description for streams, shorts, and all manner of other things. Thanks for listening, and now, on with the video. Hello, and welcome to Soul's Place, my travelling island bar, at which you are all most welcome. It has been a while since we did one of these, so I just wanted to explain what this is about. I have a huge fondness for the video games of the late 90s, the 32-bit, 64-bit era. So that's Sega Saturn, Sony PlayStation, Nintendo 64, tail end of the Neo Geo, that kind of thing. And at the time, I loved video games magazines. I was a huge fan of them. I collected them even. And in these videos, I take you through one of these retro magazines. We look at the games, the ads, the various things that were going on in gaming at that time. These videos are largely unscripted, which will be different for those of you who are new to the channel, but I hope that you'll enjoy this look back at this classic video game medium. Today, we are looking at Computer and Video Games magazine from April 1996, which makes it around 30 years old at the time of recording. Let's dive in. And starting with the cover, we'll go top to bottom. We have platforms here: Nintendo, Sega, Sony, 3DO, 3DO, arcade, Atari, and PC CD-ROM. Yeah, so this was obviously published at a time when the 3DO and the Atari Jaguar were still relevant. Let's go with relevant. Interesting. For those unaware, I will go to the Jaguar because we'll be here all day, but the 3DO was a weird experiment in trying to create a console with no platform holder. It was like, kind of like a DVD player. Anyone could manufacture one. The concept was just fundamentally bad. Like, it never worked out. Alternatively, if there are any 3DO superfans in the comments, do comment, because that would be fascinating to talk about. But yeah, so CVG. This, I believe, was the last issue, maybe the last, before they rebranded. They had a big image change in the late 90s, and I think that was just after this one. But yeah, then the cover game is Street Fighter Alpha, the first one, and you see we have the first look at Street Fighter 0 2. But Zero was what Alpha was called in Japan, so that would be Alpha 2 by the time that came to the UK, and US and other Western territories. And meanwhile we have Vampire Hunter and Darkstalkers. Are those the same game? I think those are the same games. That's strange. I guess we'll find out. And Resident Evil, which the first Resident Evil was just on the cusp of being released at this time, so very exciting time. April 1996, 30 years ago. Let's begin. Any of you who have seen the previous videos I've done on these retro mags will recognize the anti-drugs advert on the left. They were all done in this style at the time. I think they assumed that people who were into video games were likely into illicit substances. I don't know how true that was, but that was a thing at the time. Then we have some art for Street Fighter Alpha on the right here, and these chibi designs featured in many things. They were very, very popular at the time. I love them. I think they're very cute. Contents page we'll skip past. Again, for those of you who have not watched these previous videos, this magazine has 100 double pages, and if I go through every one in detail, we'll be here all day, so I'll skip past quite a lot of this, but we'll focus on the more interesting stuff. So we have the editorial, and at the time, this was how the magazines were laid out. They always started with an introduction from the editor, and just a bit of info about the writers for the magazine. Let's just read a little bit of this editorial by Paul Davies, the editor. Paul Davies was very prolific in these magazines at the time. He worked for EMAP and went on to work in games journalism, I think, and a few other places. Quite a well-known figure in these circles. So let's see. Nobody will ever create the perfect game, but there have been many perfect achievements in the history of video games. Time will always dictate that improvements are made. We accept that one year's greatest game is likely to be superseded the next. Interesting. Answers in the comments, if you will. Do you think there are any perfect video games? Are there any that you would hold up and say that are perfect? Curious. I have one. We'll talk about that later. News, and yeah, this was actually a big month. This was the month that people found out that Final Fantasy VII would appear on the PlayStation and not on the Nintendo 64 as was originally planned. That was, I can't express, you probably know, but if you weren't around at the time, this was really big news. The Final Fantasy games were generally considered a Nintendo thing. They were always by Square, but they'd appeared on Nintendo consoles, and that was a big deal at the time. I remember that news. And meanwhile, on the left here, we have, this was what I was interested in at the time, Virtua Fighter 3. You may not know this, but I am a huge Virtua Fighter fan. Lao Chan for life, y'all. But, I love that series. Love it. I'm really excited for Virtua Fighter 6, however it turns out. Meanwhile, we have the news of the Virtua Fighter Kids game, which was kind of bizarre. Meanwhile, Control a Saturn spaceship. Now this was fun. This was an April Fool's at the time. This was the April issue. Magazines used to do this at the time. And this was the April Fool's joke. And it was fun. I remember. Very well done. These are all faked screenshots. They did a good job. And of course, on the right, sometimes when we do this, these retrospectives, some of the most fun moments come from the ads, as opposed to the actual news and games themselves, just because in the 90s, they were just so strange. And I remember at the time, even then, we thought they were strange, but they were trying to compete for eyeballs, right? They wanted people to remember them, so they just did weird and gross things. See how this person on the left there stretched out with their head exploding, and because they're playing Total NBA 96, which is strange if you think about it for even a moment, because, it's a basketball game. It's not like a David Lynch movie, but let's move on. On the left here we have early pictures of Tekken 2, which was on the way, and an Alien Autopsy game. Interesting. I don't remember that one. I don't think that ever came out. Meanwhile, news that the SNK games on the Saturn would have cartridges. The Sega Saturn versions of King of Fighters, and maybe a few other games, I'm not sure, but they had a disc and a cartridge to, I believe it was to facilitate faster loading times. Because the original Neo Geo CD versions of those games had long loading times. And of course, on the right, Oxy, Daily Face Wash. I wonder if Oxy is still a thing. I'm just going to pause this for a moment. Okay, I'm just going to Google this. Oxy Face Wash. Is it still a thing? It is still a thing? What do you know? Yeah, okay, this is going to date me slightly, but I was square in the headlights for this product. There were two main brands, Oxy and Clearasil, and I knew Clearasil was still around, but Oxy's still around too, so I guess they're still doing pretty well. Aim 3, warm-up 3D fighting. Ah, okay, this one was for Last Bronx, which was a weapons-based 3D fighting game. Kind of set in a near-future Tokyo. I think it was a bit like the Warriors. It was all about the leaders of these different gangs. But the cool thing was that they were all wearing this really elaborate Tokyo fashionable streetwear for the time. And it was a great game. Really, really good. I remember that one. And Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 as well. Ah, there's another April Fool's here where they had this character called Pedro, who they created as a joke, and they used to insert into screenshots of Mortal Kombat. Wow, that's really obscure. You know, it's weird when you go through these things. Project Melody, the VTuber, she has a phrase that I absolutely love, and it's that seeing that jiggle something loose from my mind hole, and I find that I say that a lot about these things. You see this and you're like, oh, that jiggled something loose from my mind hole, and yeah, seeing that image of Pedro definitely did that for me. Computer exchange on the right here. Ah, well. Now, my UK watchers, if you remember this from the time, you'll remember Computer Exchange. But today they are still around, and they are CEX, which I believe they market themselves now as Entertainment Exchange because their biggest business is Blu-ray and DVD. But they did they still do video games, but it's not just the only part of their business anymore. But at the time, they were a video games retailer primarily, and yeah, this was their ad. What do we got here? Ooh, Street Fighter Zero, $79.99. Wow. And this is the interesting thing, because people sometimes look at modern games and they say, oh, they're too expensive. And don't get me wrong, video games can be expensive. I'm not going to tell you that they're not, but people see a game that's going to come out for £70 and like, oh, that's price going up, that's expensive. But really, you know, they were that price then, and like £80 in 1996 money. Oh, okay. Let me. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look that up. Okay, inflation calculator. $79.99. Wow. Okay, you have a moment to guess before I tell you. So that Street Fighter Zero in modern money is £200. £200. I mean, wow. That's like, for everyone else, to give like euros, that's about 300 euros, $300, maybe closer to $400 for maybe 350 euros. So that was, that was expensive. You know, I think video games tended to cost closer to like 50, 55, but yeah, that was a lot of money. What do we got here? Ooh, Bubblegum Crisis. What was the competition? Okay, they were doing a competition of some kind. What did you win? Oh, you won a whole set of dubbed or subtitled VHS tapes of the show. Bubblegum Crisis is amazing. I love that show. Really good anime show from the time. I'm more talking about the M2. I talk about the M2 quite a bit in one of the previous RetroMag retrospectives, but suffice to say, it was a console that never actually released, but there was much excitement for a long time, and then just kind of fizzled out. And on the right here we have a catalogue for Special Reserve. Special Reserve advertised in all of these magazines at the time. They were, I think they were a physical store. Yeah, you can see on there they were in Chelmsford in Essex. And also they were a mail order business, and you could order games from them. They always advertised in these magazines, and you could order things, and they did discounts for different things, memberships and stuff. What about here? Let's see. Daytona USA, $43.99. I mean, Daytona USA is an amazing game, but and you can see here, this comes around the time that they started to liquidate the Atari Jaguar. So you can see there that the Jaguar and a game and a pad was only $85.99, which was very cheap for a console. I mean, you can see at the top there, the Sega Saturn is £310 and the PlayStation is $300. So yeah, that was cheap. And then the Atari Lynx on the right, $29.99. Wow. I mean, an Atari Lynx on eBay, a new one now. I wouldn't even want to know how much that's worth. And the third-party controller as well, like useless extra turbo buttons. People remember those? They were terrible. Oh, and they sell manga video, so you can get a copy of the Guyver as well. I had those. The Guyver was great. I mean, so there was an era around this time of Manga VHS, which was an anime distributor in the UK, and they were selling these periodic kind of, they call them video comics, where they would have 1 or 2 episodes on a tape, and you would get a tape every month and gradually build up a series. I remember the Guyver, Dominion Tag Police, and so many others. It was great. Moving on. Quake. Yes. Quake was on the way out at this time. Anyone that has read, there's a book, I really recommend it. It's called Masters of Doom. All about the creation of Wolfenstein and Doom and Quake. I recommend it if you haven't read it. It's fantastic. There's an audiobook version that is narrated by Will Wheaton, and it's very good. Yeah, so this must have been an early build they got to play. That's kind of fascinating. I loved Quake at the time, I was a big fan. And then we have an advert on the right here for PlayStation Plus magazine with a giant image of a facehugger. Gross. Next page. Loaded. Okay, I remember this one. This was my gremlin. Loaded was a series. I think there was 3 of them. I want to say 3. There was Loaded, Reloaded, and I think there was 1 more. But these were top-down shooter games, and they were incredibly bloody and gory with a kind of 2000 AD comic book style. Really, really good fun. I remember at the time. Definitely one of those games that your parents would absolutely hate, but that was why they were awesome. Just all guns and muscles and violence. We're gonna move on. Oh, okay, so this is an entire feature about Gremlin Interactive. Slipstream, Hard War, Gears and Guts, and Realms of the Haunting. Slipstream was a racing game, I remember that one, but... Oh, Hard War. Now, I'm going to talk about this for a moment. Hard War is a really now quite obscure game, but at the time it was very highly regarded. I don't think it's sold very well, but reviewed very well. It's kind of like Elite, like Elite Dangerous or No Man's Sky, but it's set entirely within a giant cyberpunk city that's inside a crater on one of the moons of I'm gonna say one of the moons of Jupiter. It might be Saturn. It's been a long time, but the game was marvelous, really, really good, and it had graphic design done by the Designers Republic, who also worked on Wipeout and a bunch of other stuff. They had this incredible kind of visual language they used to work with. I think it was called something like Maximalist Minimalism. And yeah, you get a chance, check out Hardware. I'm sure there's probably some kind of mod that makes it run on modern PCs, but definitely check out the Designers Republic, because their work is incredible. Okay, moving on, we have this soccer game, Euro 96. This, I believe, was part of the actual soccer series. Gremlin had a series of sports games called Actua, which is like actual, but with the L at the end removed. I think they were emulating what Sega had done with Virtua, where, you know, they had Virtua, which was virtual with L removed at the end. They did a whole series of sports games, with Actua in the name, and Actual Soccer was one of them. And yeah, this was part of that series. I remember this was pretty good. Moving on. And the next thing is Resident Evil. It feels almost pointless talking about this, really, because compared to some of the things we've just talked about in the last few minutes, this is still one of the most famous video game series that's going. This was for the original on PS1, where it began. And I remember this was great at the time. It was so groundbreaking. The concept, the base idea, there had been a series of games called Alone in the Dark, which had 3D characters on 2D backgrounds, in similar kind of thing to Resident Evil, but the concept was nowhere near as evolved, and I remember playing this at the time and being blown away by just how scary and how fun it was. Such a good game. And really, it's not surprising that, you know, it's still around all these years later. We have more shots of Resident Evil. And, okay, next, Vampire Hunter, The Night Warriors. Vampire Hunter, The Night Warriors. So, this is part of a series of games by Capcom, which in Japan is known as Vampire, but in the West is generally known as Darkstalkers. I guess it's because it's a more copyrightable name. But this is a 2D fighting game series based on, like, monsters, so vampires and werewolves and things like that. Some of Capcom's most recognizable characters, like Felicia and Morrigan, come from this game. And they were great, you know, great games, but if you've not heard of them, you know, even if you're a fighting game fan, there hasn't been a new one in quite a long time. I wouldn't want to guess when the last one was, but it probably wasn't long after this, to be honest. I think the last one was in CPS3 arcade game, around the time of Street Fighter 3. Someone in the comments will probably correct me on that, but it is still fair to say that the newest one is old. And Capcom haven't done a new one for a long time, and that's a real shame because they're great games. And of course we move on to Street Fighter Alpha, which was the new hotness for the Street Fighter series at the time. The interesting thing about Alpha was it kind of it led the charge in terms of bringing an anime feel to the Street Fighter franchise. The sprite work from the older games, it was all done in Japan, so, you know, there was a certain cultural similarity there, but it wasn't particularly anime influenced. What happened was, there was an animated movie for Street Fighter 2, which was very popular in the 90s. You may have seen clips from it. If you haven't seen the film, there is a very prominent fight scene between Chun-Li and Vega that's very famous. Extremely well animated, but not a great story, but then, you know, it didn't really need that. It just looks really cool. And it was so good that it influenced the franchise thereafter, and Alpha was the first time that they really kind of brought that into the series. There was an actual game of that animated movie as well, only released in Japan. But this was the first one that really kind of landed with that style. The magazine goes on to have loads of very small, actually very small screenshots showing the characters doing menu moves and stuff. This was pretty common at the time because they wanted to try and these days, you know, you would just show a video, but there was no YouTube back then, so this was kind of the best way to communicate this kind of stuff. Score on the right. Let's see, what did they say? As good as perfect, in some ways better. Conversion or near perfect going up. The best Street Fighter ever, the greatest home conversion ever, almost the best fighting game ever, 96%. Interesting as well, just looking at this. So, Street Fighter Alpha was a fantastic game, and I'm not going to question the 96% because at the time it was really fun. I really enjoyed it, but in the modern day it pales into insignificance because Street Fighter Alpha 2 would come along the following year, and Alpha 2 was just amazing, and Alpha 3 is amazing as well, but there are many people who prefer Alpha 2, and regardless of which of those two you prefer, 2 or 3, you know, either one, you know, I've got time of day for you to say that, but I think it's fair to say that both of them were a big improvement on Alpha 1. This was obviously a slice of that era when it really kind of ruled the roost for those sorts of games. And next, Final Fight Tough. What is this? 57. I think this kind of reviewed badly because it just kind of felt a bit old at this point. You know, things were moving on. But still, Final Fight, always great in any form. Well, let's not go nuts. Final Fight Streetwise for the PS2 is terrible. That's an abomination, but generally the games are good. And now we have Gex. Gex was the mascot of a small company, really quite an obscure outfit at the time, known as Crystal Dynamics, who would go on after this to make Gex 2, which was actually quite a good game, but then Soul Reaver. And then after Soul Reaver, they would eventually go on to be responsible for the Tomb Raider franchise. Total NBA. This reviewed well, yeah, 84, I remember this one. You can see in the screenshot at the top left here, you can see the reflections of the players in the court. That was a big deal at the time. I remember everyone was talking about that. But yeah, this was a good game. Double Switch. Oh. Okay. Context. There was, in this era, it was actually kind of over by this point, if I'm honest, but there was an era of FMV games, full motion video, where they used these extensive video sequences to make these video games. They were kind of semi-interactive movies, if you like. And we have here on the right, Night Trap. Night Trap is the most famous. It was a game about a lot of girls at a slumber party, and these kind of monsters were trying to break in the house, and you had to like trigger off traps in the house using you scrubbed through the security cameras and would set them off and try and save the girls. And of course, you know, this set everyone off because the usual, you know, censorship and you know, parents' rights brigade and all the rest were talking about this. And to be fair, it was an FMV game that was kind of sold as an excuse to rifle through the CCTV of a house filled with kind of college-aged girls in their underwear. But the game itself was quite fun, honestly. But this was one of the games, along with Mortal Kombat, that was instrumental in forming the ESRB, which is the organization that still rates video games to this day. You know, with those age ratings in the US. Now, the big one on this page, Double Switch. Double Switch is the less well-known game. But it was kind of the follow-up to Night Trap. It was the same basic premise, same type of thing, but it was more detailed and there was more to it. And I've never played it, you know. I've played Night Trap, but I've never played Double Switch. I've been told that it is quite good. But I wouldn't say I would stream it, but I don't know if you could. I don't know if there's too many people in underwear for Twitch. I don't know if you'd get away with that. I'm pretty sure for Night Trap you wouldn't. Moving on. Oh, Descent. Oh, this was a good game. Descent was a... so at this time there was... Doom had come out, and Doom was huge, right? The first-person shooters were really big. Descent was kind of a game where you were inside a ship, inside mines, like underground facilities and things. And you could, you know, rotate and face any directions, fly up and down, left and right, and get hopelessly confused in these maze-like levels. And oh, it was so good. Descent was a great game. I mean, they give it 90% here. They were right to do that. Descent improves on the excellent PC original. Oh, so this was the PlayStation version. An awesome game which will provide anyone with a real challenge. Yeah, this was a great game. You know, it's interesting because there were several sequels. There was Descent 2 and then Descent 3 and Conflict Free Space, which was a kind of space combat game, which weirdly is part of the Descent franchise. It's kind of strange, but in a way I'm surprised. I almost would have expected Descent would have continued to today, but I guess maybe there just wasn't enough to it. Next one. Alright, Magic Carpet. This was an early game by Bullfrog. People will remember Bullfrog as the company that was founded by Peter Molyneux. Now this was good. It was kind of like a semi-strategy kind of shooter where you were on a flying carpet and would fight monsters and things. Next, Real Bout, Fatal Fury. I mean, okay. This was just a great one for me. As you will have figured out by now if you've been listening, I'm a big fighting game fan. I always have been, and I love the fighting games of SNK in the 90s. Art of Fighting, Samurai Shodown, Fatal Fury, I love them all. And this was a great one. The Fatal Fury franchise is, if I would be generous, uneven. I think it would be unfair to say that they're all amazing, but this one was particularly good. Really, really fun. Geek Howard, down there on the left, my man. Look at that physique. Oh, I love this game. Moving on. Sega PC. This dates this a little bit. So on this page is a lot of games that were from different platforms, the Mega Drive and the Mega CD and things. And these were released on PC, and that was a big thing at the time. Now these days you wouldn't even report this as news, you know. I mean, every game releases on tons of platforms now, but back then releasing a console game on PC, that was actually quite an interesting thing. You know, that didn't happen very much. I think it's fair to say this is just before this became the norm. You know, we talked about Resident Evil earlier on, but like, there was a PC version of Resident Evil, and there would be for most major games going forwards, that weren't, you know, first party, so, yeah, so, this was the shape of things to come. Moving on to Road Rash. Which version? PlayStation version. So Road Rash was a Mega Drive and, I want to say Mega Drive and SNES game. And then there was a follow-up on the 3DO, and then that came to the PlayStation and Saturn. This was a fun game. I remember this was good. Essentially, it was a bike racing game where you could fight other people with a baseball bat or try and punch them off their bikes and things. Yeah, these were great fun. And then Terminator Future Shock. Now, today, this is quite an obscure game, but there was Terminator Future Shock and Terminator Skynet. both by the same developers, and they were really, really fun. I remember these were great games. Very much in that category of licensed games that, you know, history is forgotten. When we go through some of these, you see titles like Resident Evil and Quake and those sorts of things, and you know they still persist to today. But yeah, Virgin's Terminator games didn't really go that far, but they were good. I remember they were fun. Alien Trilogy by Acclaim. This was a good one too. I remember I played this on the Sega Saturn. I think I borrowed this one from a friend. I never owned it, but this was good. It was difficult. I remember it was a hard game, but yeah, I think it did a good job in terms of trying to feel like the Alien franchise. It would be difficult to recommend now, admittedly, because Alien, you know, Alien is one of those franchises that I think is just perfectly suited to video games. There are so many elements about it that work really well in the gaming sphere, and it's not a surprise that we had so many really good Alien games in the years that followed. In October last year, I played through Alien Rogue Incursion, the VR game that's available on Steam, and I recommend you check that out if you get the chance. But yeah, this was great at the time. Also, fun fact, but the follow-up to this, which was Alien Resurrection for the PS1, was the first major console game to have proper, well, what we would consider now proper twin-stick controls. So, you know, that's a fun thing. 93, high score. Right, so we're on to the kind of quick fire round here, as this has gone quite long now. But we have Street Fighter Alpha 2. I'm showing off the new characters. Gen and Sakura. Sakura in particular being a mainstay of the franchise going forwards. Killer Instinct 2. I was never a big fan of these ones. These were fighting game series by Rare, heavy on the combo system. I was never a big fan, but some people love them. Laura 96, a cricket game. Do you even get cricket games anymore? I haven't seen one in a long time. ISS, International Superstar Soccer Deluxe. This was a big franchise, went on for many years after. Then Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. I remember playing this was great fun. Shining Wisdom, oh, this was a weird one. Top-down, Sega Saturn adventure game. Honestly, not very good, but followed here by Panzer Dragoon Y, which was a great game. One of the best of that entire generation. If we ever get to the magazine with that in, I'll wax lyrical about that for an hour, because I love that game so much. Bad Mojo, a weird kind of FMV game where you play as a cockroach. That's a very strange game concept. Formula 1, a very, very popular series of racing games on the PlayStation. Wipeout. This was a preview for the Sega Saturn version of Wipeout, which came a while after the PlayStation original. Wipeout is amazing. I love this series so much. The visual style of it is gorgeous. The Sega Saturn version was, I mean, it was okay, but the definitive one was the original for the PlayStation. Then we have a guide for Zero Divide. Zero Divide was a fighting game for originally for the PlayStation and later for the Sega Saturn, where you played as humanoid, well, mostly humanoid robots. It was good. It played a bit like Virtua Fighter. It was a good game. And then we have a guide here to Virtua Fighter 2. Again, absolute love of mine. I love the Virtua Fighter series. I must have pored over these pages so much. Okay, then we have cheat codes. Let's see. Secret characters on Shinden 2. And we have viewer letters. I'm not going to read this, there's a lot of text. But if you want, you can always pause this and read it. I recommend I recommend doing that sometime though with some of these because they can be a real eye-opener in terms of, you know, the temperature of kind of gaming culture at the time. Real kind of time capsule. And then a preview here of next month for the magazine. And listener, if you would like to hear more of these RetroMag retrospectives, do let me know in the comments. And finally, gameplay on the back page. We talked about Special Reserve earlier, but gameplay was a similar retailer doing mail order. What do we have here? Let's see. They have the tower links as well. And, that PlayStation, $279.99. That was cheap. £305 with Doom. Doom on the PlayStation was a big deal. I remember everybody was very excited. The earlier versions of Doom, like on the Super Nintendo and 32X, were pretty dreadful. And the PlayStation version was the first console version that was really, really good. And then that wraps up this issue with an ad on the back for the Lawnmower Man 2 Beyond Cyberspace. Listener, let me be abundantly clear as we finish off. Do not waste your time watching this movie. It is possibly the worst movie I have ever seen. And I have seen some terrible movies, but this was dreadful. I remember they were advertising this in all of the games magazines at the time, because it has a vaguely video game theme, I suppose, but terrible. But let's finish on a more positive note. So in the editorial at the beginning, the editor talked about perfect video games and how no video game is perfect. And I guess to some degree, you know, that's not wrong, but I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What video games do you consider perfect? Are there any? Do you think there are none that are perfect? But if there are any that you think that are, I would love to know what you think. Thank you, listener, for joining us on this journey through Computer and Video Games Magazine, April 1996. We also have memberships on YouTube now. At the time of recording, members get access to videos 1 week in advance of going public on YouTube, and their money will go towards the equipment I need for videos, and that directly supports the entertainment that you're watching right now. The cost is inexpensive, so if you're fortunate enough to be in a place to support the channel, please check that out, and you will find those details in the description. Huge, huge thanks to those of you who have already signed up for membership. But please remember, I appreciate all my watchers and listeners, members or not. And so, until next time,